Welcome into the Top Buffs Countdown for the men's basketball program. We've been doing this with football for a number of years, started doing it with basketball as well. Adam Munsterteiger, the publisher of BuffStampede.com, joined by the professor, Jake Shapiro. Jake, how are you?
Good. I just got done teaching my class. So another banger of a class here in Journalism 404. And I love being a part of the CU Boulder community in a new, fun way.
Awesome. What was the topic today?
It was actually great for this conversation. I actually name dropped you. It was about workplace relationships and how to deal with people you work with, your bosses, people that work in PR, and the athletes themselves. Something that I think gets maybe overlooked in journalism school a little bit because everything's about connections. So how do you make connections? How do you keep connections? How do you keep those relationships?
Perfect. Awesome. Well, usually we would have 13 guys on scholarship to count down here, but we all know Mason Faulkner left the Buffs high and dry. And, of course, Quincy Allen is out for the season with a hip injury, so they will not be included in this. But, Jake, let's jump right into it. And at number 11 is going to be somebody that's coming back from an injury, and that's guard Javon Ruffin, the son of longtime NBA player and current Phoenix Suns assistant coach Michael Ruffin. I have pretty high expectations for his career, but I think, Jake, you got to kind of limit those expectations. He was cleared to practice once they had just started preseason camp, so he's got a lot of catching up to do.
Yeah, he's not someone I expect to contribute right away. He only played a few minutes in the mine scrimmage in Boulder. He's not going to be a rotation guy in my mind this year, at least maybe until very late, or if there are injuries. Like you said, I like his ability in the future. He's a really good finisher for his size. He's got a nice frame. Obviously, he's going to have a certain level of IQ that you see with Jabari Walker that's innate because his dad was also a professional basketball player. You just grow up around the game, you get that. It's a special thing that these guys have. But it's hard to say what I've seen from Ruffin because he's been, injured or just coming back. And I don't want to make those judgments yet. I'm just mostly going off tape and what I've heard from people. So he's not someone I expect to be a huge contributor to this team. But ultimately, if he's thrust into a position like Tristan da Silva, where he needs to spell somebody and play maybe 10 minutes a night for a handful of games in February, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. It's not going to be a death sentence to this team. So, yeah, I think Javon Ruffin is a guy in the future. Great addition, great guy to have. I love this scholarship from Tad Boyle, but this year there's some guards ahead of Javon that are definitely going to get some playing time, and that's why he's 11th on this list.
He moved all over the place, during his childhood, which is pretty typical, being the son of a guy that's playing NBA, and he played overseas for a while. And he went to the grind session and played for the Phoenix grind session team last year, went up against top competition, and he was really starting to kind of be a borderline blue chip recruit by the time he injured his knee. Initially, they said it's going to be 6 to 8 weeks. They went in there to clean up the kneecap issue, and there was cartilage damage as well. So that's what resulted in about a 6.5-month recovery. Again, he didn't get a chance to participate with the team in those practices leading up to the Costa Rica trip. It was good for him, though. He did get to go on that trip and participate in the team building stuff. One thing I like about him, Jake, is just his versatility. This is a guy that's brought in as a combo guard, so he's got the handle and can handle the ball. I don't think he's ever going to be a true point guard at CU, but he's also got enough size that he can play on the wing. He told me that, like a couple of guys, and Clifford's another one we'll talk about later in the countdown, that he wants to have the ability to guard 1 through 4, and I think he's maybe 4 stretching it a little bit depending on the matchup, though. He is a versatile guy that will be in this program, and maybe for 5 years, because we didn't see him play in that scrimmage at Nebraska. Maybe he will redshirt.
One of the things he said is that his favorite player is Drew Holiday. So it goes completely in line with your 1 through 4 theory. And, the 4 in college basketball is a little different than the 4 in the NBA. And granted, they might be the same size at 6'7" or so, but a 4 in the NBA at this point is really a perimeter player. The 4 in college basketball for most teams is still mainly an interior player. So that's going to be hard for Javon Ruffin at his size to guard, at least early on in his career. Maybe if he adds some tremendous amount of weight, he'll be able to do that, because you think of Eli Parquet, I wouldn't be too upset with Eli Parquet guarding a 6'7" guy. Like that wouldn't be a killer. Now a 7-footer, no way. So maybe Javon Ruffin is able to get up to that caliber defensively. But again, we're talking about all Pac-12 defender and Eli Parquet, like one of the best defenders in college basketball walking into this season. So one of the things I do like from Javon Ruffin that you mentioned is he went up against some of the top players. You look at a guy like Clifford, who stayed in Colorado, and he was playing against nobodies. He was playing against people that I went to high school with, basically, that, not that good. Javon Ruffin was getting some major looks. And what I think this really does to a player playing against that caliber of guys in high school and AAU ball is you can't just rim run and get to the hoop every time and finish because you're athleticism and you're better than everybody else and you just flash that. You have to have some smartness, some IQ, and the ability to make some reads. And watching his tape, are there a lot of dunks? Yes, he's an athletic guy, but you can see that there's some reads he makes that are very good reads and good decisions. And like you're saying, I don't know that he'll ever be a point guard, but having a combo guard and having 2 combo guards is kind of been Tad Boyle's recipe for success, aside from McKinley Wright. Like Spencer Dinwiddie was a combo guard with Askia Booker here. Like a lot of the guys he's had, Alec Burks is a shooting guard that was playing combo guard. A lot of these guys have been combo guards. Tad Boyle likes combo guards.
The last thing I'll say here before we move to number 10 is it's a good thing for CU's program that a guy as talented as Javon Ruffin is the first guy we're talking about going in reverse order on this top ups countdown. So that's a good sign for the future. Number 10 is Julian Hammond, obviously a dual sport athlete during his career at Cherry Creek, and now gets to focus exclusively on basketball. This is the least hyped guy in that vaunted recruiting class that Tad Boyle brought in, Jake. And I think that's partly because he was splitting time in high school, but also because Julian Hammond does a lot. While he does a lot of things really well, there's not one area of his game that's really going to, blow you away, right? He's kind of a well-rounded player, but nothing at this stage is all that exceptional.
Yeah, and it's hard. You're playing at Cherry Creek, you're around a bunch of other good players. It wasn't like he was even if he was the star, so to speak, of his team, it wasn't like, it was him carrying a bunch of Joe Schmoes. They were a talented team. I think I was talking to some people at Cherry Creek, and I'm not sure who ended up playing for that basketball team his senior year, but his junior year, he's playing he's playing high school basketball with like 3 dudes who ended up playing college football, like Iowa and stuff. Like he's playing with, maybe they're not the best basketball players, but he's playing high school basketball with insane caliber athletes. The same athletes that he's on the football field with, winning a state title at Cherry Creek. Now, I haven't seen Julian Hammond play in a game in person that is competitive, i.e. I didn't see him play high school basketball, but I saw him play high school football a bunch. I was tasked to cover those Cherry Creek teams a bunch when I've been working for the Post. And what stood out to me about Julian is he is obviously very athletic, but he makes a lot of really good decisions on the football field. And I think that IQ can translate onto the basketball court as well. There's a certain calmness to his game and demeanor where he does not get, it doesn't look like he shouldn't be in situations. He seems like he knows where he should be and he does not get out of place. And you go talk to him after a big game-winning thing or, a game-winning play, and he's a really calm guy. He's in his own head. He's got that even keel demeanor. And I think Tad's got to love that about Julian. I also really like that Julian, like you said, well-rounded guy. And maybe that's why, you don't look at him and go, oh, his athleticism stands out. His shooting stands out. His playmaking. He's just a canvas to work on with Tad Boyle. There's a lot of stuff that Julian can add to his game, but his bar is already which is great. And again, we're talking about for Tad Boyle to have off the end of his bench.
This is a guy that I think you would probably like to redshirt, but again, Mason Faulkner not being here, it forces you to put Julian Hammond into your rotation this year. What's your expectation for the number of minutes that Hammond will likely play throughout the course of the season?
It's one of those things where I could see him increasing in minutes throughout the course of the year. He got a handful of minutes, or two handful of minutes, quite literally, in the first two scrimmage, about 10. That's kind of where I would see Julian Hammond getting 10 minutes. But we're having him at 10. Tad Boyle kind of narrows that rotation down to 8 guys by the end of the season. And I think ultimately Julian Hammond and KJ Simpson are going to be 2 guys fighting for those backup guard position minutes. And not only Mason Faulkner not being here, but Quincy Allen being hurt. Those are the things impacting Julian. Like you said, playing. Javon Ruffin still probably get redshirt, and him is going to be forced to play. You need 10 players. You need 10 scholarship players. And that could be good for Julian's development too. Like that, you don't have to sit here waiting for these guys to be good in their 5th year. Like, yeah, did Luke O'Brien get a free year last year? Sure. But you also saw Luke O'Brien grow tremendously last year. And that's part of it. Getting those handful of minutes here and there, getting in games like against New Mexico, where you're going to get an extended run maybe at the end of the game when the leash is not as short. This is a growing opportunity for Julian Hammond and an opportunity to get a lot better and improve his game in a lot of aspects. And I ultimately think for these guys that come out of Colorado, it's not practice where they're going to learn. They need to learn how to get to game speed in the NCAA, in the Pac-12, because that's when they see, oh, 5A basketball in Chassa is a lot different than Pac-12 basketball. And granted, some of these guys have played AAU, but it really is. And I think that shock kind of hits them once they're on the court at Sox Walseth.
You kind of led us into our next guy in the countdown here at number 9 is Luke O'Brien. I think, Jake, you could probably say he's the best shooter on this team. Now, I think it's going to come with some streak in there. I think there's going to be nights where he's struggling to get that shot down, but there's going to be other nights where he kind of goes off. So I think it's going to be kind of a hot and cold season with him. But one thing I really like about Luke O'Brien is just the energy that he plays with out there. He's a guy that's always hustling, and he's become a better rebounder during his time at Boulder so far and put on some good weight as well.
He's going to get a lot of Lucas Seawart comparisons because he's a shooter and he's white and he's big. That's what's going to happen. But I think where Lucas was early on in his career is not where Luke O'Brien is. Like, Luke O'Brien's ahead of where Lucas was. Lucas was not a very good rebounder till his senior year. I like Luke's coming off the bench. They can have Luke play some, playmaking roles. And Luke did this last year. Luke brought the ball up. Luke did some things in, some non-tight situations that were indicative of a point guard, and he's 6'7". Now, do I think he's going to be pulling up for 3 behind pick and rolls? No, he's more of a catch and shoot guy, but he can move that ball around, and he's someone that I think is going to be someone that Tad Boyle trusts with the ball in his hands. So, and this is one of those cases where Luke O'Brien was the star of his high school, star of maybe Colorado State basketball when he was in his team on the floor, and it translates into his game because he's able to do, different things with the basketball. He's able to command an offense, able to command a team. Luke's got some leadership abilities. I don't think they're going to show up this year because they're not needed to, but I see him as being a future leader of this team as well. I am really, really high on Luke O'Brien. I really like the way he interacts with his teammates. To me, it's a question of, can he get that frame, which looks a lot better than it did in high school? He looked great now physically. Can he get that frame to being a really good physical defender? Because he's going to be a little bit undersized to be in the post, but he's also going to be a little bit, maybe slower to be on the perimeter. So where does Luke O'Brien fit defensively, and how much can he motor around to cover for maybe some of his inefficiencies? Because he's going to be a plus player on offense when his shot is hitting. And the Buffs are going to need that shot to hit, and they're going to need him to keep shooting because, like you said, you look at the rest of the roster, and Luke's the only guy you'd probably qualify as a shooter. Other guys can shoot. Luke is a shooter.
At number 8 on our list is KJ Simpson, obviously signed with Arizona initially. Sean Miller gets fired, then he changes up and gets let out of his letter of intent, signs with Colorado. And Jake, the number one thing that stands out to me about him is just his confidence. He came in day one. It wasn't this wide-eyed look on his face. He felt like he fit in from the jump, and one of the quickest players we've seen come into CU's program.
Yeah, I didn't expect him to be above Luke O'Brien initially. And, I said this to you, anyone 9 through 5 on this list could probably go any other way. I probably would have put Luke in front of KJ just because of where Luke was last year. But with KJ Simpson, he just won a state title in California. And it's easy to see why you'd have that confidence and you wouldn't be wide-eyed, because you're winning a state title in California against some of the top high school basketball players in the country. You got to feel pretty damn good about yourself. And he came in here to Colorado, and not only did he carry that bravado, but he's brought that onto the court. And Tad Boyle's already played him, 20 minutes a game in these scrimmages. And not only that, KJ, I think, was the leading scorer in that one game against Mines with 12 points. I mean, granted, it was only 12 points, and, they're splitting minutes. They're only playing 20 minutes a night, and anyone in the rotation was playing 20 minutes a night. But it shows what KJ can do with a limited amount of touches and do quickly. So I think he's someone that might give Tad Boyle some growing pains because he is a freshman. But I also think that it's going to be hard to take KJ Simpson off the floor at times. And he's going to be someone the fans are going to adore. He's going to be kind of like that backup quarterback where it's like, why isn't he out there? Why isn't he out there? Because one, he's fun to watch play. He's got a lot of confidence. He's got a fun haircut. He does all the fun things, but he's also a good player and he brings a lot of energy. And, not to say anything about anyone energy-wise on this team, because Evan Batty obviously has a tremendous amount of energy. Jabari Walker brings that fire, but and those guys maybe bring it pretty consistently. But KJ Simpson, I think is going to learn how to bring that energy consistently through Evan Batty. But KJ can also be that spark plug and provide that Bones Highland energy that the Nuggets have right now anytime they bring Bones off the bench, where he instantly energizes your lineup. Now, do I think KJ Simpson is that much of a bucket? No. But he can develop that. He's got some of those raw skills to get to that level. He has a good base to shoot. He has a good base to playmaking. He has a good base to finishing. He can do a lot of different things on the basketball court. And again, with Tad Boyle, it's ultimately, can he prove himself defensively to stay out on the court to do what he wants to do on offense? And that's pretty much across the board with any freshman that comes into Colorado, is you got to start proving it on defense, because you maybe didn't have to do that in high school.
Just to talk a little bit more about the depth on this program, Jake, I think from 1 till 9 on this list, going down to Luke O'Brien, there's going to be a game this season where probably all 9 of those guys have at least one night where they're the best player on the team, where one of them, Luke O'Brien gets hot, or KJ Simpson really, runs the show for a while. And at the end of that game, you kind of look at the box score and think back on the game and go, tonight, that guy was the best buff out there. Do you think I'm off there? I really do think that each of these guys are going to have that night where they kind of stand alone and stand out by themselves.
The only one might be Tristan da Silva, just because he's so steady. I don't know that he's going to have a blow up game, so to speak. But yeah, the difference between the Buffs' first best player and 9th best player is not that much on a game, could be the same any single game. Now, it's the consistency of Evan Batty that sets him apart. And hopefully it's the same thing with Jabari Walker this season. But in reality, the raw ability of Luke O'Brien is not that far off that of Evan Batty, and that's the 1 through 9. And this is what happens when you bring in a top 10 recruiting class or whatever, and ended up being a top 11, top 12 recruiting class right behind guys that had also been really good. You're bringing in a lot of talent to a team that was also pretty solid, that just went to the NCAA tournament. Granted, they lost a lot of guys, but they still have a couple core guys. You're supplementing a lot of talent with talent already. Some of those guys, and we talk about this in football, are going to be recruited over, so to speak. It's harder for this to happen in basketball, but you're starting to see a little bit of that on the hardwood.
At number 7 is the second highest rated signee in modern CU basketball history. And that's a 7-footer from Wyoming, Lawson Lovering. Jake, I think he's got a chance to work his way up and be higher than 7th at the end of the season, but we're kind of projecting how things are at the start of the season. Lawson Lovering's got a lot to learn. You love what he brings as a freshman defensively. He's missing some of those bunnies around the rim. I think that's just something that he's going to improve on steadily as the game kind of slows down for him a little bit. But going against Evan Batty every day in practice has obviously been huge for him. What are your expectations for Lawson Lovering this season?
I think Tad Boyle's going to have a hard time taking off the court because he's the biggest guy and he's going to rebound a lot. Like, Tad loves rebounding, and Lawson's their only size. Evan's a bowling ball. He's 6'8" and big, but he is undersized for the Pac-12. Lawson's their only guy inside that is of the same height of the trees around the conference. And they're going to need that size. They're going to need those 5 fouls. They're going to need anything that Lawson Lovering can give their team, because he could ultimately, if he somehow finds a way into the starting lineup, which I'm not sure how he would, because Tad does not like playing 3 bigs, and that's what he would be doing with Lovering, Batty, and Walker, because that's where the slot would be pushing Walker down to the small forward. But if that somehow can happen, the Buffs are going to be unbelievably good. I don't think that's going to happen, but Lawson could be a guy in the future that's a defensive anchor. He could be a guy on offense that has a tremendous post game to go with a 3-point shot, because he's one of those modern stretch bigs. He can handle the ball just a little bit as well. And being the size that he is, he should be able to snatch up some rebounds. You talk about him being the second highest recruit of the modern CU basketball era, and I think that's behind Josh Scott. You saw how impactful Josh Scott was for 4 years, and he didn't go to the NBA, but he's had a tremendous pro career overseas. Lawson Lovering has the chance to not only do that, but one up Josh. And I'm not going to put Lawson Lovering in the same sentence as Josh Scott and saying, hey, I expect him to have a better college career than Josh Scott, one of the best CU athletes of all time. No, I'm saying Lawson has the potential to basically go wherever he wants to go. Now, it's a matter of, can he get to that level? And like you said, there's a lot of growth to get to that level. But what he offers them right now, at the very least, is a nice touch, some rebounding, and maybe some stretch shooting. And that in itself is enough to get into the rotation. So if he can start adding to that, and by the end of the year, start going, should they start Lovering over Batty? Which sounds crazy, because Evan Batty, as we know, is a really good player. That's going to be a really good spot for Lawson to be in.
And a good character kid that Tad Boyle has said that he's a sponge just in terms of the coaching. And you've really seen, I kind of go back to, and these guys did some good things in their CU career, so maybe this isn't fair, but I think our image of XJ and Wesley Gordon is when they're suspended at Cal, snickering on the bench late in the blowout loss. You've seen Tad Boyle really put an emphasis on character with recruiting, and not that all these guys are choir boys, but I think he's put a premium on how this locker room meshes. And he talks about when they bring recruits out on a visit, if you see something you don't like from this recruit, please come to the coaches, because they want to nip that in the bud. They don't want that as part of their program. Lawson Lovering, like I said, you almost want him to be a little bit more cocky than he is. He's such a low-key, humble kid.
But that also plays into why they got him. If he was a cocky kid, he probably goes to UCLA out of Wyoming. There's a reason why he's at Colorado, and it's because he fits the build of wanting to play in Boulder for Tad Boyle. And that is a good thing, because Lawson had the ability to go to a lot of different places. I also think this, when you talk about that with Tad Boyle, Tad's walked into gyms and offered guys scholarships very quickly. And that's worked out great, and that's worked out poorly. One of the cases where it worked out great was George King. He's one of the best character guys Tad Boyle's ever had. So Tad Boyle is not perfect still. We saw this just happen with Mason Faulkner, and just a bunch of stuff come up. He's going to have some misses with character, because it's really hard to judge an 18-year-old off of maybe 2 hours of interactions max. But he absolutely nailed Lawson Lovering to the best of our abilities to judge it right now. And judging from the interactions I've also had with his family, this is a dude that's going to be someone that's good to have around the Colorado Buffaloes program for a long time. And I'm already getting the sense that I feel, and other fans will feel, hey, I want this guy to do well, because it's going to be a great reputation and a great pole bearer for the rest of the university.
At number 6, this might surprise some people that might be more excited about Lawson Lovering and KJ Simpson coming in just because of the hype those guys garnered during the recruiting process. But number 6 is Nick Clifford. Tad Boyle referred to him at Media Day as basically a 6th starter. That's how he sees Nick Clifford going into the season. And he's rebounded the ball really well in the preseason, did that well in both of those preseason scrimmages. Again, versatility. This is a guy that can do a lot of things. Isn't going to necessarily wow you with one aspect. What are your expectations for Nick Clifford?
He played less than 60 minutes last year, and he already has more points in the scrimmages than he had last year in the entire season. Nick, it's hard to say because of that. I also absolutely love Nick Clifford's game, and so do scouts. They were so late on Nick Clifford because he was a 3A player. Tad Boyle got him early. And a lot of people came after Nick Clifford in the recruiting process right after. And people from UCLA, people from Kansas, people going, oh, we really missed on this kid. And there was some buzz in the springs from people that are really great basketball minds that I talked to going, this kid has the potential to be an NBA guy. I haven't said this about anyone on the list at this point, including Lawson Lovering. I don't know if I'll say it about anyone else, including Jabari Walker. But Nick Clifford has some really good tools to work with in his toolbox. And I think that, Tad Boyle called him a 6th starter. I think he's going to be starting by the end of the year. I think Nick Clifford, with his rebounding, I think he's going to offer some defensive versatility. I think he packs a punch from the wing with what he can do on offense. Hopefully he'll be able to shoot. But he can do a lot of different things. And he was really, really good in high school. And no one was paying attention because he was at Vanguard, I think. And, Tad Boyle caught on early. And this is one of those cases where you go, there's 2 different sects of the Buffs fan base. It's Tad needs to recruit Colorado better. Why are these guys leaving the state? And why is Tad recruiting Colorado? Well, both of those overlap in the middle with they got Nick Clifford, and that answers kind of both questions of Tad's recruiting Colorado good enough because they end up with guys like Nick Clifford, and they're recruiting Colorado because they end up with guys like Nick Clifford.
It's an interesting story there because the summer before his sophomore year of high school, he goes up to a CU camp and they're not even looking at him. He's playing with kind of the second group of kids, not the elite kids at their camp. He grows 4.5 inches, and all of a sudden the next summer he becomes a top priority for him. So cool story there. That is 6 through 11 on our Top Buffs countdown. We're going to be back, and we're going to count down the top 5.